Hi guys, I'm back home and I am ready to continue with answering your questions. Today's question is from D Savage 4570 and she says, "Very nice video. Thanks so much for answering our questions. At any point were you able to have an uncle/niece relationship with DM, Shelly also, or was it all business and only about Scientology?" This is a great question, and so today I am answering this question from a little bit of a different space. If you hear some screams, it's just because my kids are not in school right now, so there's a water balloon fight going on outside the door. I promise no one is being tortured. So yeah, just don't worry. Don't worry about the screams, guys. To answer this question, the answer is yes, there was an uncle-niece relationship. I did not know that my uncle David Miscavige was the leader of Scientology until I was about 7. And even at that point, I don't think I fully got the significance of it. So, all before that point, I just saw Dave and Shelly as people who sent me really, really beautiful dresses for my birthday. Like, I specifically remember this one blue silk dress that I love so much, and I remember they got me this little Tiffany's box that just to put my earrings in or something. And I actually got one for my daughter a few years back because I loved it so much. This is what it looks like. So I just when I saw them, we would spend Christmas together before I was 6 years old, and I would just see them in the context of family. I remember, my family had moved to LA when I was 2, and then I went to the ranch, which is in Hemet. I went there when I was 6, but between the time when I was 2 and 4, we once went back to visit New Hampshire, which is where I was born, and I remember going on a private plane with them, and I just remember hanging out with the family, and Dave was always really nice to me. He was into photography, and I got dressed up, and he took photos of me in my grandma's apartment, and he would just sort of joke around and was honestly really sweet. By the time I got to the ranch, I still did not realize that my uncle was the leader of Scientology. I would see him speaking at Scientology events, but my dad would also speak at them, and I would be waving. I'd be like, "Hi, Uncle Dave. Hi, Daddy." But I didn't really know what they were talking about the whole time. To me, they were just going on and on for hours, and they were saying blah, 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 and I was dressed in my party dress. And those are my memories from when I was a kid, because I just wasn't thinking of other things. But when I went to the ranch when I was 6 years old, I remember early on, Shelly, she sent me a big box of stationery because she would write me and I wouldn't write her back. And so she sent me a big box of stationery because I had used it as an excuse. And then I would write her using that stationery. And so when I was at the ranch, we would also spend Christmas together. Every year we would the whole int base, which is where international executives who manage Scientology are located. All of the international executives and the entire int base would go to Big Bear for Christmas, and we would usually stay at an inn with Dave and Shelly, and we would just hang out all day by the fire, and everyone would just talk. And usually I would be opening presents and doing something. I remember having a loom one time, and Shelly was just helping me with that, and we were just chit-chatting. And or we would go to another snowy place and we would just all hang out together and eat and drink and that sort of thing. And then also on Sea Org Days, which is once a year on August 12th, there would sort of be an Olympics between Sea Org members. And so people would race at swimming, and they would race at other things, but I think I only paid attention to the swimming, so I can't think of things off the top of my head. And I remember I would sit out by the pool with Dave and Shelly, and my dad would be competing in these sort of Olympics, team games, and he was a really fast swimmer. And I remember Dave would be like, there was this other guy who was really good at swimming, and he would like almost beat my dad sometimes, or he did beat him a few times. He was like a professional swimmer previously to being in Scientology. And so he would be like, Jenna, help me. And we would get all these floaties and try to put them in his lane to stop him from beating my dad at the swimming race. And we would just like chat. I remember Dave would say, well, he couldn't be in the games because people would just let him win. And then I remember at one Sea Org day, everyone in my family thought that I was going to be really tall when I was little, because I guess I had big bones or something. But Dave said that he thought that I was going to be short, and he had his chiropractor evaluate me on the spot, and he also agreed that I was going to be short, and he was right about that. And I remember one time, like, because the cadets would also be in some of the team games, I was in the swimming race, and I was horrible because I would plug my nose, and Dave would try to show me how to not plug my nose so I could swim faster. But, you know, we were mostly just hanging out with him during the day at the pool, and then we would sit at the table with him in the evening and watch the show, because there would be like a show where, like a talent show or funny skits all on Sea Org Day. It was kind of like the best day of the year. There wasn't many days off, and so Sea Org Day was really special. And then after the show, when people would get awards for winning at the team games or Olympics, then there would be dancing, and I would love dancing, and Shelly would sit and talk to me, and I'd be like, well, why can't you come dance? And she'd be like, oh, it's just not appropriate. And I just didn't understand why. She'd be like, but you go have fun. I like watching everyone dance and having fun. So, yeah, I would definitely hang out with them during those times. And any time that I was at the base, I would be there to help work in the galley, making food in the bakery, or I would occasionally be on course. And one time, one period, I was on the purification rundown, which is this Scientology thing where in order to get rid of toxins, you go in a sauna for 5 hours. Anyways, I had to do that on the in base. And so when I would go to the purification building, or when I was finished there, Dave would come pick me up on his motorcycle, and he would take me to his office, and I would play with his dogs, and I would mostly talk to Shelly, but Dave would just chime in with jokes every once in a while, and he was usually busy doing other stuff. So I'd mostly be sitting and talking to Shelly for hours. But he would also do things like one time he thought it would be funny to take photos of me at his desk on the phone, and like I was like bossing everyone around, like I was the ruler of the world or something. And yeah, he would just occasionally come and ask me questions and laugh, but Shelly would sit and talk to me for hours. She would talk to me about my schooling. She would talk to me about all my Scientology courses that I had to complete before I could graduate and come work on the base with my parents. And she would also talk to me a lot about health and what healthy eating was. She was super into it. And because I was like this is for another video, but my job at the ranch, which is a boarding school for kids whose parents are at the international base. One of my jobs was that I was like the medical officer, where I would hand out vitamins and remedies for sicknesses. And I would, like, if people were isolated because they were sick, I would have to bring them food, etc. Anyways, so she would talk to me about health because that was my job. And so on some level I had an interest in it, and she was very interested in health. So she would tell me all sorts of things that were I wasn't really smart enough to understand them. Like I remember her telling me, oh, milk isn't really good for you. How come no other species drinks the milk of another species? And then, but every morning I drank milk with my granola. And so then I just resorted to putting orange juice in my granola. I was not the sharpest tool in the shed, or I was just a little kid. So I didn't really understand what she meant by certain things, and she wasn't really there to see what I was doing as a result of what she was saying, but that was just a small, silly thing. Yeah, so throughout those years, I would just see them, I would say like probably like 10 or 20 times a year, and yeah, it was just sweet. There was nothing like official. I didn't call them sir or anything like that. It was just like they took an interest in me, and it was really friendly, and it made me feel important. I remember one time when I was probably about 9 years old, there was a family reunion in Philly, because my great grandparents were having like, I don't know, maybe it was like their 60th wedding anniversary. Maybe, I don't know if it was their 60th, but so the whole family was there, and we stayed on this farm, with where one of my grandpa's brothers lived. And I remember Shelly telling me that at that time that I was much more on purpose than the rest of my cousins because I was a Sea Org member, and that what I was doing was really important. And I don't know, I guess that at that time that just made me really proud. And I even remember seeing how they interacted with each other, because most of them are older than me, but they were acting like little kids. Like they would whine and complain, and they'd be like, it was funny now that I think back, they'd be like, I want to sit by Jenna. No, I want to sit by Jenna. And it was actually kind of sweet. But at the time I was like, oh my God, they're acting like babies. But it was just because I was being treated like an adult my whole life. So, but yeah, so I remember her saying that I was like, kind of like I was better than them. And that made me just like kind of, I guess, a little bit like arrogant and high on myself, which helped me to get over any little bits of jealousy I felt after going, because we also drove through Vermont into New Hampshire, and seeing their rooms and all the clothes they had and their big beautiful houses. And like I remember my cousin Chrissy had all these wonderful dresses. It was very hard not to be jealous of her, especially since they lived in our old house. So when my parents joined the Sea Organization when I was 2, my Aunt Lori, and who's my dad's sister, they bought the house from my mom and dad, and they lived there, and their kids lived there. And Chrissy was my cousin, who is just a little bit older than me. So on some level, she was kind of living the life that I would have had, and it seemed pretty dang wonderful. Like I remember picking berries in the forest surrounding. So I think when Shelly told me that I was like more on purpose and I was doing the right thing by being in the Sea Org, that helped me get over my little bit of jealousy that I had for the life that they were living. In 1994 and 1995, there were a couple periods of a few months where instead of being at the ranch at this boarding school for kids, I went to Clearwater, Florida, because my mom had been working there for years and I hadn't been able to see her for a long time. And so I would go there to visit her, and I was sort of completely taken out of my regular life at the ranch, which was lots of hard work, 35 hours a week of labor. And I was sort of, I was on course at Flag doing Scientology courses, so I didn't do schooling, but I was able to be a little bit more of a kid during that time because I just lived with my mom in an apartment. And although I would only kind of see her briefly sometimes at lunch, and then she would get home at like midnight, what would happen is that executives from the INT base would fly down to Clearwater because every Friday there would be a graduation for everybody who was completing Scientology courses, and there would be a guest speaker, and one of these INT executives would be a guest speaker. And so when they would come into town on Friday night after graduation, I would like put on a whole show. And oftentimes this was Dave and Shelly who would be coming into town, or they would just be in town for other reasons. I have no idea why. And so I would put on shows and they would all come watch. It was usually like in a bedroom, and I would put like chairs in there, and I would like make tickets, and I would dress up and like paint my face, and then I would like do flips on the bed, or and everyone clapped and was nice. Or I would I remember my grandma got me tap shoes, and so I did a whole tap dance without having the first clue how to tap dance, and everyone was still nice and cheered. And I would do fashion shows where I would like put on all these clothes that were in my mom's closet, and everyone was nice and humored me. I would sing sometimes, but I would face backwards because I was too shy. And I remember after that time, Shelly was like, you did good with your singing, but it might help you if you did some more TRs so that you wouldn't be so nervous in front of people. Like, meaning that the Scientology's communication drills, where you kind of learn to exist in front of people without flinching or being nervous or whatever. And so I remember that. I also remember doing a weird show where I tied a teddy bear to strings, and I like made it fly from the balcony, and I like kind of was doing some weird ice skating show with a teddy bear. And I remember Dave and Shelly being there, and then I remember throwing candy down at them off the balcony. But they were really nice. I remember sometimes they were like, oh, is the show over? And I was like, yeah, that's the end of the show. So they were probably like really anticlimactic, weird shows, but they were nice and sweet. And then usually after the shows, we would go to Dave's apartment and we would watch a movie. I remember we watched the Star Wars trilogy there, so we watched like one movie each week. And I remember we went out to see Apollo 13 at the movies, and we went to a hockey game once, and I remember Shelly putting on her makeup, and I was with her, and she would like do my hair in this little ponytail on top of my head. And she told me that I didn't need any makeup because I was really pretty. And so I would just hang out with her, and she would just teach me, like she would tell me that I was going to be a messenger one day, which is a senior organization in Scientology that worked directly for L. Ron Hubbard. She was a messenger when she was 9 years old, and so she really wanted me to be one, and she really was interested in me completing my courses so that I could do that. We would also go mini golfing sometimes. I remember once getting a hole-in-one, and everyone was like so excited. Sometimes I would drive with them into the base, and where they would go to work in the same offices as my mom. Often when they were in town, I would have lunch at a different location with the gal who was responsible for watching me, but that was at my mom's request. And I remember one time I visited the offices during lunchtime, and my mom had asked me not to, and so I ran away and hid when Dave came in, and he caught me and he saw me and he was like, "Why are you running away from me, Jenna?" And I was like, "Oh, well, because my mom told me not to come here during lunchtime when you're here." And he was like, "Well, you can come here anytime." At the end of 95 and at the end of 94, I was back at the ranch, and just when I would see Dave and Shelly, they would still be, Dave would put me on the back of his motorcycle, I would go to his office, etc. And then when I worked in the galley, I would put little artwork on their sort of menu thing that they had at the table, and they would give me points for my artwork. Yeah, and I actually have some letters from around this time from Shelly. I would get letters from her all the time. It just, when you leave Scientology, they take away all of your personal letters and photos because they consider it bad, like bad PR or bad security if you have photos of what's going on at the base. And basically they're afraid that some of these photos are going to get people in trouble and some of these letters are going to get people in trouble. But these happen to be in my bottom drawer at the ranch, which is where I stored all of my letters from everyone. And my mom was able to collect them somehow before she left the Sea Org and Scientology, before her and my dad left. And she was able to hold on to them. I can only imagine it's because they didn't go through my parents' things as thoroughly, because probably my parents wouldn't let them. But so I have a couple letters from Shelly, and they're nothing exciting, or but it's kind of cool that I'm able to have. They're not just from Shelly. I have letters from all sorts of people. I have letters from my mom, my dad, friends. I have letters from Jenny Linson. So I do feel really lucky that my mom was able to get some of these things, because sometimes when you don't, we already weren't taking, like there wasn't a bunch of grandmas and aunts and whatever around, or parents who were constantly taking photos of us. So sometimes it feels like there's almost no photos of my childhood or when I was in the Sea Org. So the few that I have are really cool and special. It's like as if it actually happened. Okay, let's see. I have one letter here from February 1996. So this is from Shelly. This is her letterhead. And it says, it's from February 11th. So it actually would have been right after I turned 12. And she says, "Dear Jenna, I loved getting your letter. Sorry for the late reply. Thanks for the birthday wishes." Her birthday's in January, I forget when. "I hope you had a good birthday and picked up whatever you wanted." They sent me some money for that birthday. "What did you get?" "I have finally managed to get a picture of Dave and I. I hope you like it." "That's great on auditing Trisha." I was doing some clay table auditing on another cadet. It's just a type of auditing for a certain course. "I'm very proud of you, and I didn't know you were the child sec. Good for you." Okay, so that was just my job in the cadet org. This time I was no longer the medical officer. I was responsible for basically taking care of the younger children who were at the ranch. Like Laura was one of them. So she said, "I didn't know you were the child sec. Good for you. Come visit sometime. Lots of love, and write back, Shelly." And then I have another one here that is from March 1996. And it says, "Dear Jenna, okay, I'm finally answering your great letter. Thanks for the embroidery thread necklace. I love it. That's wonderful news on your tip." That is basically the list of courses you're supposed to do in a certain given order in Scientology. So I was telling her what my lineup for courses was, and she says it's wonderful news. I don't know what news I told her. "Aren't you going to do auditor training?" "I hope so." "Sorry about the missing picture. I've enclosed it now." I think she tried to send me a picture in an earlier letter, but it wasn't there. "To answer your question, yes, potatoes are good for you if eaten raw. Cooked ones are just total starch, which is not good for you." I think I asked her a health question because I remembered her saying, "Potatoes aren't good for you." And I was like, I remember her saying something about green potatoes, but anyways. She says, "Yes, I'm going to flag for March 13th, but I'll see you some other time. Right back. Much love, Aunt Shelly." Yeah, so I mean, this is all I have from her, but I just thought it would be interesting to share them and to share a little bit about the human aspect of Dave and Shelly and how things were before. There were also things that I would see, how things were when I was younger. But there were also things that I would see on the periphery that, I knew that they were important. Probably about when I was like 10, 11, 12, I would see people being a little bit afraid of them. When I was in Clearwater, sometimes I would have to be taken out of a room because Dave was about to yell at people. And on one hand, like, I was kind of like, oh, people yell at us all the time at the ranch. So to me, it was normal. But obviously people were more afraid of him. But for the most part, in every case, he was very nice to me. He would joke around when he saw me. He would even, I remember when I was in Clearwater, he asked to borrow my CDs and he would listen to them, and he said that I had good taste in music. So on some level, he was interested in the family. He was interested in me as a family member. And I'm sure on some level, he wanted that. Shelly wanted that. But also they knew it was a distraction and it wasn't in line with the purpose of the Sea Org and Scientology. And and it was kind of confusing for me as a kid because I would hear both things, you're just a spiritual being, which we called a Thetan, and you are no, Thetan can be the parent of another Thetan. It's just a body thing. But then I would hang out with these people during Christmas. They were nice to me. They would treat me in a certain way that made me feel special. And it was like this cognitive dissonance. And that's how it was until I was about 12 years old. And then that's when things started to change a little bit. And so I'll have this as a part 1, and I think I'll do another video about it in the future, so I can I can explain how things progressed when I became older and when I became a Sea Org member. Thanks so much for listening, you guys. I hope there wasn't too much screaming in the background. If you have any questions whatsoever, please put them in the comments and I will try to incorporate them into my next video, or for part 2 of this, or maybe even a part 3. And again, thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to check out Sins of Scientology on YouTube. And if you haven't read my book, it's called Beyond Belief, My Secret Life Inside Scientology and My Harrowing Escape. And you can find it on Amazon. All right, see you soon. Bye.